Big news just came out regarding the future of the WWE brand split, so we'll see what's going on there. We'll also see what the latest is with Sasha Banks and Naomi's rumored return date, as well as what's going on with Becky Lynch and more. Let's start things off with the latest on the WWE brand split, because this has been a back and forth situation over the last few months. The WWE had first split their roster back up in the early 2000s when SmackDown started to become a main show. Each brand had their own roster of talent, and it was highly successful back then because WWE had such a loaded roster and was able to pull it off back then. But as the years went on, WWE went away from the brand split and merged their rosters to be used on both shows. Then, in 2016, WWE decided to go full brand split mode once again. And since 2016, Raw and SmackDown have had their own exclusive rosters. It was a great move back in 2016 because it allowed more opportunities for the entire roster. There were 2 world titles, 2 women's titles, 2 tag team titles, so superstars that were barely being used before the brand split started to get a lot of opportunities and make the most out of it. So it was great at the start. But as the years went on and a big chunk of talent were let go from the company, the Raw and SmackDown rosters weren't as deep in depth as they once were. Fans really took notice of this issue during the 2022 Men's Royal Rumble. That match wasn't as thrilling as a Royal Rumble match usually is, and a lot of fans blamed it on a weakened roster. Then, when Roman and Brock's world title unification match was confirmed, a lot of fans understood that as another big hint that WWE was possibly done with the brand split. But reports came around that time of WrestleMania claimed that the brand split was not over. Well, fast forward a few weeks later, after the crowning of Unified Tag Team Champion, and now reports are completely flipping on what they said a few weeks ago. Now, they're saying that the brand split is, in fact, basically over. There's now 1 world champion and 1 set of tag team champions. And like we've been talking about over the last few months, Raw and SmackDown superstars just randomly appear on opposite brands now, whenever they feel like. We know that in the past few years, it was a big deal if a superstar was coming to the opposite brand. WWE invented the wild card rule that allowed superstars to make limited appearances on opposite shows. That rule was basically forgotten about right after it was invented. So now, you don't need a wildcard rule or anything of that sort. Superstars can now appear on whatever show they want, whenever they want. The only real plot hole with ending the brand split will be the 2 women's world titles. If the brand split is coming to a full end, maybe it doesn't make the most sense to have a Raw and SmackDown women's champion anymore. So maybe we'll see a title unification match there real soon, because if everything's going back to normal with merged rosters, it's possible that we could go back to having just 1 overall women's champion. And if that's the case, then maybe we have a big unification match between Bianca Belair and Ronda Rousey in the near future. Once we have 1 women's champion, that would definitely mark the end of the brand split. There's a lot of pros and cons to the end of the brand split. Obviously, it's kind of unfortunate for the superstars on the bottom of the card, because now superstars from other brands will be coming over and taking TV time away on the show that could have been going to those lower card superstars. But on the bright side, it's great for the quality of the show. Now WWE doesn't have to work with half their roster for their major shows. Now the full roster will be at their disposal, and it'll make for a better show. Storylines could probably progress a lot faster now if they're updated on both Raw and SmackDown. From 1 storyline update per week, we could start seeing 2 storyline updates per week for those bigger storylines on Raw and SmackDown. That's a big plus from the end of the brand split. So that appears to be the latest there on the brand split. It looks like things may slowly start going back to how it was before the 2016 WWE draft. Superstars will be used on both shows going forward. WWE has found themselves in a tricky situation for when it comes to the Raw Women's title at Hell in a Cell. Originally, Bianca Belair was set to pick up the win over Naomi at Hell in a Cell, while Asuka and Becky Lynch would keep their feud going at the same time. But due to Naomi's exit, Bianca Belair has sort of been thrown into Becky and Asuka's feud. So it'll now be a triple threat at Hell in a Cell between Bianca Belair, Becky Lynch, and Asuka. It was reported that WWE originally wanted to keep Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch apart for a bit until the next huge show to have that WrestleMania rematch. But with Asuka now being put into the match to face Bianca Belair, it looks like they had no choice but to throw Becky Lynch in there as well. It's still not a one-on-one rematch between Bianca and Becky, so maybe they will still make that happen down the line. Bianca Belair should definitely pick up the win here, but it's difficult because who can she really pin? You can't really pin Asuka because she's still just coming back, and you can't pin Becky Lynch again either. So Bianca should still win, but it's going to be tricky for sure. In other Becky Lynch related news, Nia Jax was recently asked during a recent Q&A if she still had a good relationship with Becky Lynch. Becky and Nia had a big broken nose incident back in 2018, which robbed us of seeing Becky versus Ronda Rousey, but it was sort of the reason we saw the women's main event at WrestleMania 35 as well. So that punch from Nia Jax to Becky Lynch really did alter WWE history in a lot of ways. But Nia Jax responded to the question by saying that she's unsure if Becky Lynch has a good friendship with anyone backstage. That's all Nia had to say about Becky, but it definitely appeared to be a little jab, implying that Becky Lynch doesn't have many friends backstage. Becky has yet to respond to those comments from Nia Jax. Nothing has reportedly changed with Sasha and Naomi's WWE status. They're still suspended, were stripped of the titles, had their merchandise removed, and continue to be buried by WWE on air. But fans have noticed something pretty insane. Sasha Banks and Naomi are still being advertised for the June 24th edition of SmackDown. Now, this graphic just went up by WWE days after Sasha and Naomi's walkout took place. So a lot of fans were confused to see Sasha and Naomi on the SmackDown graphic and advertised for this June 24th edition of SmackDown. Even though WWE just put this graphic out after the walkout, it's still hard to imagine Sasha and Naomi actually being there on this show. So this is likely a graphic that was already done, and maybe they didn't have time to update it because where we're at right now with this entire situation, it doesn't look like Sasha and Naomi are returning anytime soon, even in late June. So that's the latest there with that situation. Yes, Sasha and Naomi are being advertised for the show, but it's hard to picture a world where they actually appear on SmackDown next month. But what are your thoughts on all of today's stories with the end of the brand split, Becky Lynch and Sasha and Naomi? Leave your comments below, don't forget to subscribe with all notifications on, and leave a like if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, guys.